We are going to look at the League of Nations and the debate in the U.S. Senate about the League of Nations. Let's start with the end of the war. By the fall of 1918, the German army realized that their hopes of winning the Great War were slim at best, and German leaders agreed to surrender. So on November 11th, 1918, Germany and the Allies signed an armistice, which is an agreement to stop fighting. Although the fighting had ceased, the two sides had yet to sign a formal peace treaty ending the war. Some of the Allies, especially France and Britain, wanted a peace treaty that would punish Germany for the war. They especially wanted Germany to accept blame and to pay enormous reparations, payment for damages. President Wilson had a different vision for peace than Britain or France. Wilson wanted a peace without victory, meaning that no nation would be forced to take the blame or be punished for the war. Wilson also had an idealistic vision for how to use the peace treaty to prevent future wars, which he laid out in his 14 points addressed to Congress. We talked about that last week. Central to his vision was the establishment of a League of Nations, an international organization that would help protect peace by providing a forum for resolving international disputes. Let countries talk it out rather than fight. Leaders from around the world met in Versailles, France, to negotiate a peace treaty in the summer of 1919. Although many nations were in attendance, it was France, England, Italy, and the United States that really had the power to dictate the terms of peace. European leaders resisted most of Wilson's ideas and insisted that the treaty punish Germany by including severe reparations that would cripple the German economy. The Allied leaders did, however, agree to establish a League of Nations. This new organization included a General Assembly of all member states and an Executive Council comprising the world's most powerful nations. The Executive Council was given the power to create a court that would manage disputes between nations. As part of membership in the League, each member nation was expected to reduce its military to only what was needed for self-defense and to submit any conflicts with other member states to arbitration by the League before going to war. Again, talk it out before you go to war. Now, President Wilson signed the Treaty of Versailles, but the Constitution requires that treaties be approved by 2/3 of the Senate to become law. And Wilson faced a tough political battle when he returned from Paris. Some senators were strongly opposed to the treaty. A group of about 15 senators who became known as the Irreconcilables opposed the treaty at all costs. Irreconcilables were never going to sign the treaty. Other senators were willing to negotiate on the treaty, but they were concerned about the terms of the agreement for the League of Nations. They had some specific concerns. These senators, led by Henry Cabot Lodge from Massachusetts, that's him right there in the middle, became known as reservationists because they would only agree to the treaty if it included certain reservations or exceptions that addressed aspects of the treaty that they didn't like. They wanted to make some changes, put some asterisks, make some exceptions, and then they'd be willing to sign the treaty. Those are reservationists. A principal objection, a big problem that a lot of the senators had was the language of Article 10 of the League of Nations Charter, which stated that the members of the League undertake to respect and preserve as against external aggression the territorial integrity and existing political independence of all members of the League. Take a moment right now, pause the video. Why might some senators oppose this section of the Treaty of Versailles? The documents we look at today are going to reference Article 10. Had Wilson been willing to compromise with the reservationists on the language of the treaty, it would likely have passed. However, Wilson was unwilling to make even small, just symbolic changes. Rather than compromise, Wilson went on a nationwide speaking tour to drum up support for the treaty. However, while on the tour, Wilson fell ill and he returned to Washington, D.C., and he suffered a debilitating stroke that would leave him physically and mentally impaired for the rest of his presidency. Wilson was never able to get the Senate to do what he wanted, to ratify the treaty. The Senate voted on the treaty 3 separate times during Wilson's final term in office, and they rejected it. They voted no on it every single time. The Treaty of Versailles was never ratified by the Senate of the United States, and the United States itself never joined the League of Nations. 63 other countries did, not the United States. Today, we're going to look at some documents to try to answer this question. Why did senators oppose joining the League of Nations? And you're going to write a paragraph answering this question using evidence from the documents.